And I'm Mia 28, a graphic designer from Boston with an eye for beauty and detail in everything I create. When James proposed at our favorite beachside restaurant, I thought my fairy tale had begun. His family's wealth intimidated me initially, but his love made me believe I belonged. The engagement party at their estate was supposed to be our special moment. If only I'd recognized the warning signs in his mother's cold eyes. Now I know some dreams come with nightmares attached. If you're watching this, drop a comment telling me where you're from, hit that like button, and subscribe for the journey ahead. Trust me, you'll want to see how this ends. My story begins in a small apartment in South Boston where I grew up with my parents and younger sister, Amanda. Dad worked construction while Mom juggled waitressing jobs to keep us afloat. We never had much, but our home overflowed with love and encouragement. From childhood, I showed artistic talent. My parents noticed how I'd spend hours sketching everything from neighborhood scenes to imaginary worlds. Despite our financial limitations, they scraped together money for art supplies, believing in my passion before I fully understood it myself. Mia has a gift, my mother would tell relatives, proudly displaying my drawings on our refrigerator like precious gallery pieces. High school strengthened my resolve to pursue graphic design. My art teacher, Mrs. Reynolds, recognized my potential and mentored me through portfolio preparation. When acceptance letters arrived from several colleges, including one with a partial scholarship, my family celebrated like we'd won the lottery. College tested my determination. I juggled 3 part-time jobs, waiting tables, stocking retail shelves, and working at the campus print shop to cover tuition and living expenses. Many nights I designed projects until dawn after closing shifts, surviving on coffee and dreams. Despite exhaustion, I graduated with honors and landed an entry-level position at Horizon Design, a boutique agency known for innovative work with local businesses. Within 2 years, I advanced to senior designer, creating campaigns that attracted attention throughout Boston's creative community. That's how I met James. Horizon had secured a contract with Tech Vision, an emerging software company, where James worked as lead developer. During my presentation of campaign concepts to their executive team, I noticed him immediately. Tall with thoughtful brown eyes, he asked insightful questions about my design choices, rather than just focusing on marketing metrics like his colleagues. After the meeting, James approached me. "Your understanding of our product is impressive," he said, his voice warm and genuine. "Most creatives we've worked with never bothered to learn the technical aspects." His compliment felt different from the usual professional flattery. We exchanged business cards ostensibly for project follow-up. 2 days later, he called to ask about a detail in my presentation. The conversation flowed effortlessly from work to movies to favorite Boston restaurants. Before long, he asked if I'd join him for dinner at Lucia's, an upscale Italian place I'd mentioned wanting to try. On our first date, James listened intently to my stories about growing up in South Boston, my struggle through college and career aspirations. Unlike other wealthy men I'd occasionally dated, who treated my background as either exotic or something to overcome, James seemed genuinely interested. "You've accomplished so much through your own talent and determination," he said. "That's rare and valuable." As weeks passed, our connection deepened. James introduced me to classical music concerts and art exhibitions I'd never experienced, while I showed him the authentic neighborhood pizzerias and street festivals that represented my Boston. We balanced each other perfectly. 6 months into dating, James mentioned his family for the first time in detail. I knew he came from money, but the scope of his family's wealth and social standing became clearer. His father, Richard, owned a financial investment firm with offices nationwide. His mother, Victoria, came from old Boston money and maintained their social calendar and charitable engagements. "They can be traditional," James admitted. "Especially my mother. She has certain expectations about the people in our social circle." That first warning flickered briefly before fading. "How bad could traditional really be? They'll love you once they get to know you," James assured me, squeezing my hand. "Your talent and intelligence will win them over." I believed him completely. After all, I'd worked hard my entire life to overcome obstacles. Winning over his family seemed like just another challenge on my path to happiness with the man I was falling deeply in love with. As our relationship progressed, James spoke more about our future together. He admired my career ambition and promised to support my dreams. Unlike previous boyfriends who expected me to eventually prioritize their goals, James celebrated my accomplishments and encouraged my professional growth. "We'll be partners in everything, though," he promised. "Your success matters as much as mine." How could I not fall completely in love with a man who valued me so completely? When he surprised me with weekend trips to New York for design exhibitions, or remembered details about projects I was working on, I felt truly seen for perhaps the first time in my life. I pushed aside occasional concerns about his family, focusing instead on the beautiful relationship we were building. When James finally suggested meeting his parents, I approached it with nervous optimism, certain that anyone who raised such a thoughtful man couldn't possibly be as intimidating as I feared. How wrong I was. The red flags I'd ignored were just the beginning of what would become the most painful lesson of my life. The day I first met James's family remains etched in my memory with painful clarity. We pulled up to their Beacon Hill mansion in James's BMW, and I felt my stomach tighten at the sight of the imposing brownstone with its manicured garden and ornate iron gate. "Just be yourself," James reassured me, kissing my cheek before leading me up the granite steps. The massive oak door opened before we could ring the bell, revealing a uniformed housekeeper who greeted James warmly before giving me a curious once-over. "Mr. and Mrs. Harrington are waiting in the drawing room," she announced, taking our coats. Drawing room, not living room. I mentally catalogued the difference, already feeling like an anthropologist in foreign territory. The interior stunned me with its obvious opulence. Crystal chandeliers, illuminated oil paintings, and gilded frames. Oriental rugs covered gleaming hardwood floors. Every surface displayed antiques or art pieces that looked museum quality. James guided me through the foyer, his hand reassuringly firm against my lower back. I'd chosen my outfit carefully, a navy blue dress that projected professionalism without seeming like I was trying too hard, paired with modest pearl earrings borrowed from my mother. Now surrounded by such luxury, my carefully selected outfit felt hopelessly inadequate. The drawing room matched the entrance in grandeur. James's father, Richard, rose immediately from an antique leather chair. Tall and distinguished, with silver-streaked dark hair, he extended his hand with polite reserve. "Mia, welcome. James has told us about your work in graphic design." He said, his handshake firm, but not overly warm. "Thank you for having me, Mr. Harrington. It's wonderful to finally meet you," I replied, proud. My voice remained steady. From an elegant sofa by the marble fireplace, Victoria Harrington made no move to stand. Her blonde hair was styled in a perfect chignon, not a strand out of place. Diamond earrings caught the light as she tilted her head to examine me. "So you're the artist James has been spending time with?" She said, her tone making artist sound like a questionable occupation. "Do come sit." James's sister Elizabeth entered moments later. With her warm smile and genuine, "So glad to finally meet you," she immediately became my potential ally in this intimidating setting. William, James's older brother, arrived last. His resemblance to James was striking, but where James's eyes held warmth, William's contained his mother's calculating assessment. His greeting was polite but distant. Dinner proved excruciating. Victoria orchestrated the conversation to highlight my outsider status while showcasing their family's connections and accomplishments. "Which preparatory school did you attend, Mia?" Victoria asked, while serving staff presented the first course. "I went to South Boston High School," I answered honestly. "Public education." Victoria's slight grimace spoke volumes. "How interesting! And your parents? What do they do?" "My father works in construction. My mother manages a restaurant now after years of waitressing." Victoria exchanged glances with William. Hard-working people, I'm sure. The conversation continued in this vein, with Victoria inserting subtle digs about my background, education, and career choice. When I mentioned a successful campaign for a local brewery, Victoria commented, "Commercial art has its place, I suppose." James remained frustratingly quiet during these exchanges, occasionally squeezing my hand under the table, but never directly challenging his mother's thinly veiled insults. After what felt like hours, dinner concluded. As James gave me a tour of the house, I finally whispered, "Your mother doesn't approve of me." "She's just protective," he defended. "She needs time to see how amazing you are." Later that night in my apartment, James apologized properly. "I'm sorry about tonight. Mom can be difficult with everyone at first. Dad liked you though, and so did Elizabeth. Your mother practically interrogated me about my family history," I pointed out. "She'll come around," James promised, pulling me close. "Once she knows you better, she'll love you as much as I do." Those words nearly stopped my heart. While not explicitly saying "I love you," the implication hung in the air between us. Despite my misgivings about his family, especially Victoria, I decided to try harder. If James believed we could overcome these obstacles, I would trust him. After all, I was falling deeply in love with him, not his family. Over the next weeks, I found myself torn between growing certainty about my feelings for James and increasing discomfort about his family dynamic. When alone, James and I connected perfectly. Around his family, he became someone different, someone who deferred to his mother's judgments and seemed ashamed of my background. Still, I refused to give up. If Victoria Harrington couldn't see my worth immediately, I would prove it to her over time. James was worth fighting for, even if it meant navigating the treacherous waters of Boston's elite social circle. Give her time, James continued to assure me. Things will get better. I wanted desperately to believe him, clinging to hope that love would eventually bridge the chasm between my world and his. 6 months after that initial uncomfortable dinner, James and I had settled into a rhythm that mostly involved seeing each other away from his family. When family gatherings became unavoidable, I steeled myself with determination to win Victoria's approval. My first attempt at bonding came when Victoria mentioned needing help selecting a gift for a charity auction. I eagerly volunteered my design expertise. "That's thoughtful, Mia," she said with a tight smile. "But I was thinking of asking Elizabeth to join me at Saks. They know our family there." Despite this rejection, I persisted. I accepted Victoria's invitation to lunch at her country club, where she proceeded to point out every etiquette mistake I made, while introducing me to her friends as James's friend who does commercial art. Each interaction left me feeling diminished. Victoria excelled at delivering compliments that functioned as insults. "That dress is surprisingly flattering on your figure," or "Your speech patterns have improved since we first met you." James began suggesting small changes to help me fit in better with his family. Perhaps I could tone down my Boston accent. Maybe update my wardrobe with more conservative pieces. Would I consider growing out my shoulder-length bob to a style Victoria might find more feminine? Each suggestion chipped away at my confidence, but I rationalized these changes as compromises for our relationship. I started shopping at stores I couldn't afford, maxing out credit cards for clothes that never felt like me. I practiced speaking more formally, losing the colloquialisms that connected me to my roots. During one particularly tense Sunday brunch, Victoria introduced Sophia Cavendish, daughter of one of Richard's business partners. Tall, blonde, and impeccably dressed in designer clothes, Sophia represented everything Victoria wanted for James. "Sophia just returned from finishing her master's at Oxford," Victoria announced proudly. "Her family's summer home is just down the coast from ours in Newport." Throughout brunch, Victoria directed conversation towards shared memories between James and Sophia, highlighting their compatible backgrounds. James participated politely while occasionally squeezing my hand under the table in reassurance. That night I confronted him. "Your mother is trying to set you up with Sophia." "Don't be ridiculous," James said. "Sophia's just a family friend." "A family friend your mother clearly prefers over me," James sighed. "Mom's traditional. She imagines me with someone from a similar background, but I've chosen you. That's what matters." I wanted to believe him, but doubt had taken root. My best friend Taylor voiced concerns after meeting James and witnessing his behaviour at a dinner with Victoria present. "He becomes a different person around his mother," Taylor observed. "And he lets her treat you terribly. Is this really what you want, Mia?" "He's worth it," I insisted. "We love each other." "Love shouldn't require erasing yourself," Taylor replied quietly. I dismissed her concerns, though they echoed my own growing unease. The James I fell in love with increasingly disappeared in his family's presence, replaced by someone who prioritized his mother's approval over my feelings. Despite these tensions, our relationship progressed. One evening after work, James suggested dinner at the beachside restaurant where we'd had our third date. As the sun set over the water, he dropped to one knee and presented a stunning diamond ring. "Mia Walker, you've brought joy and creativity into my life. Will you marry me?" Tears filled my eyes as conflicting emotions collided: joy at his proposal, love for the man kneeling before me, and apprehension about joining his family permanently. The hopeful part of me won out. "Yes," I whispered as he slipped the ring onto my finger. That night, floating on happiness, I pushed aside all doubts. James loved me enough to propose. Surely that meant he would stand by me against any family objections. The engagement would force Victoria to accept me finally. James called his parents immediately to share our news. His father offered congratulations while Victoria's response came through, clearly even without speakerphone. "Well, I suppose we should discuss arrangements." Not congratulations, not welcome to the family, just arrangements. Still, I clung to optimism. With an official engagement, Victoria would have to acknowledge me as James's chosen partner. The upcoming engagement party would be my opportunity to finally secure my place in the Harrington family. How naively I underestimated Victoria Harrington's determination to protect what she considered her family's legacy. The weeks following our engagement should have been joyful. Instead, they became an exercise in diplomacy and disappointment as Victoria assumed control of every aspect of our engagement party planning. The Harrington family has traditions, she informed me during our first planning meeting at their home. The engagement celebration sets the tone for the wedding and marriage. What she meant became clear as she systematically dismissed every suggestion I offered. We've always used Robertson's for catering, she said, when I mentioned a talented chef friend who could create a personalized menu. The color scheme should complement the house, she countered when I suggested incorporating my favorite deep teal. Harrington engagement parties are formal affairs, she declared when I proposed a more relaxed garden celebration. James attended the first 2 planning sessions before conveniently having work commitments during subsequent meetings, leaving me alone with Victoria's steamrolling. The guest list became another battleground. Victoria insisted on 200 guests, mostly Harrington family connections, business associates, and social acquaintances. I'd like to invite my college roommates and colleagues from Horizon, I said, providing a modest list of 20 names. Victoria skimmed my list with thinly veiled disdain. We need to be mindful of capacity constraints. I'll see which of these we can accommodate. When invitations went out, I discovered only 6 of my friends had made the cut, while Victoria had added 30 names not on our original list. My parents and sister were included, but extended family members I'd requested were deemed unnecessary. It's primarily a Harrington celebration, Victoria explained when I questioned these decisions. The wedding will better accommodate your side. James's response to my frustration proved equally disappointing. Mum has connections to maintain, he explained. Dad's business partners expect certain considerations. Can't you just be flexible on this? This is our engagement party, James, not a business networking event. In my family's world, they're often the same thing, he replied, not recognizing how problematic that statement was. Victoria scheduled my dress appointment without consulting me, arranging a private showing at an exclusive boutique where the Harringtons had a long-standing relationship. The owner, Madame Elise, greeted Victoria like royalty while eyeing me with professional assessment. We've selected several options suitable for a Harrington engagement, Madame Elise announced, leading us to a private salon. The dresses were objectively beautiful, traditional, elegant, and clearly expensive. They were also nothing like what I would have chosen for myself. Too conservative, too matronly, too much like something Victoria would wear. When I emerged in the third option, an ivory column dress with elaborate beading, Victoria nodded approvingly. Much better than those colourful things you typically wear, she commented. This elevates your appearance significantly. I caught my reflection, barely recognising the woman staring back. The dress was beautiful, but belonged on someone else. It erased every trace of my personality. We'll take this one, Victoria decided before I could object, with some alterations to address the fit issues in the bust and hips. Her casual body criticism stung, but I remained silent, watching my future mother-in-law purchase a dress I hadn't chosen with her platinum card. The night before the party, I confided my concerns to my sister Amanda during her stay at my apartment. I barely recognise my own engagement party, I admitted. Victoria has created an event that has nothing to do with who James and I actually are. Amanda studied me with concern. Are you sure this is the family you want to marry into? James seems great when he's just with you, but every story about his family makes me wonder if he'll ever really stand up for you. He loves me, I insisted. Once we're married, things will be different. Marriage doesn't magically change family dynamics, Amanda said gently. If anything, it cements them. I dismissed her concerns, but they echoed in my mind as I tried to sleep. James had called earlier, excited about the party and oblivious to my reservations. Tomorrow's going to be perfect, he'd promised. You'll finally be officially welcomed into the family. I clung to that hope as I drifted into uneasy sleep, pushing away the nagging voice that whispered this perfect party might actually be the beginning of the end. The morning of our engagement party dawned bright and clear, seemingly perfect weather for what should have been one of the happiest days of my life. Amanda and Taylor arrived early to help me prepare, bringing champagne and reassuring words. You look stunning, Amanda declared as I stood before the mirror in Victoria's chosen dress, now altered to fit perfectly. My hair had been professionally styled into an elegant updo that felt foreign but undeniably sophisticated. "It doesn't really feel like me," I confessed. "The important thing is that James loves you for exactly who you are," Taylor said, helping adjust my necklace. "This is just one day of playing dress-up." We arrived at the Harrington estate at 1 o'clock, 2 hours before guests were due to arrive. Victoria had insisted I be present early for family photographs. The house had been transformed with elaborate floral arrangements, professional lighting, and staff in formal uniforms preparing to serve. Victoria greeted us in the foyer, her critical gaze sweeping over my appearance. "The dress looks acceptable after alterations. Your hairstylist did a reasonable job." From Victoria, this constituted high praise. She barely acknowledged Amanda and Taylor directing a staff member to show Mia's friends to the guest suite until the event begins. My protest died on my lips when James appeared handsome in his tailored suit. "You look beautiful," he whispered, kissing my cheek. The genuine admiration in his eyes temporarily soothed my anxiety. The photography session proved tense. Victoria continuously repositioned me, adjusted my posture, and directed the photographer to try angles that flatter Mia's features. James stood by occasionally, throwing me apologetic glances, but never intervening. As guests began arriving, I noticed a peculiar pattern. Many approached with curious expressions as though they'd expected someone else. Several women my age glanced at my ring with poorly concealed surprise. "James finally settled down," one elderly woman commented, "after all the suitable matches proposed over the years." Another guest, a business associate of Richard's, asked pointedly, "How did you two meet again? Victoria mentioned something about you working for a company James was consulting with." The implication that I had somehow trapped James, or was beneath the family's station, became increasingly clear with each interaction. Victoria had been sharing her disapproval with their social circle long before this day. James was frequently pulled away from my side to speak with important family connections. During one such absence, I overheard Victoria speaking to Sophia Cavendish in a secluded corner. "Don't worry, darling," Victoria said, her voice slightly slurred from too much champagne. "Some engagements are temporary obstacles. James will come to his senses." Sophia's response chilled me. "Mother says the prenuptial agreement will likely scare her off anyway." I retreated before they could notice me heart-pounding. Prenuptial agreement, James had never mentioned this. The revelation that Victoria considered our engagement temporary and was actively undermining it to others made me physically ill. By the time the formal announcement and toast approached, Victoria had consumed several more glasses of champagne, her composure slipping with each one. James rejoined me, oblivious to my distress, as he guided me toward the centre of the grand salon where Richard would make the official announcement. Richard's speech began traditionally enough, welcoming guests and expressing gratitude for their attendance. When he introduced James and me as the happy couple, Victoria made an audible scoffing noise. "And now," Richard continued, "we officially welcome Mia into the Harrington family." Victoria stepped forward, swaying slightly. "Are you absolutely certain about this, James?" she interrupted, voice carrying across the suddenly silent room. "There's still time to reconsider more appropriate options." Gasps rippled through the crowd. James stiffened beside me. "Mother," he said firmly, "this is inappropriate. I love Mia and have chosen her as my future wife." Victoria's face contorted with rage. "Love? What does love matter against centuries of family legacy? She's not one of us, James. She never will be." James stepped toward his mother. "You're embarrassing yourself and insulting the woman I intend to marry. I think you should go upstairs and rest." Something in Victoria snapped. With surprising speed for a woman in her condition, she lunged forward. Her hand struck my chest in what felt like a punch, but was actually a kick from her pointed designer shoe, sending me stumbling backward into a serving table. Pain bloomed across my sternum as glasses crashed around me. Before anyone could react, Victoria grabbed my left hand, wrenching it painfully as she twisted the engagement ring from my finger. "This ring has been in the Harrington family for generations," she hissed, her face inches from mine. "It doesn't belong on the hand of someone like you." With dramatic flair, she turned and threw the ring directly into the ornate fireplace where flames were burning despite the warm day. The precious diamond ring James had placed on my finger with promises of love disappeared into the fire. "Dogs don't become brides in this family," Victoria announced loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Remember your place." The room fell into stunned silence. Elizabeth gasped. Richard stood frozen in shock. Several guests began murmuring and backing away from the scene. Through tears of pain and humiliation, I looked to James, waiting for him to defend me, to condemn his mother's actions. Instead, he rushed to Victoria, taking her arm. "Mother, you're not well. Let's get you upstairs." In that moment, I saw everything with perfect clarity. James's first instinct wasn't to check if I was injured or to retrieve the ring. It was to manage his mother and the family's public image. Elizabeth hurried to my side, helping me up and examining the rapidly forming bruise on my chest. "I'm so sorry, Mia. Let me get you some ice." I straightened my spine despite the physical pain. Without a word, I removed the Harrington pearl necklace Victoria had insisted I wear, placing it on a nearby table. Meeting the shocked gazes of the assembled guests, I walked slowly but deliberately toward the exit. "Mia, wait," James called, still supporting his mother. "Don't leave like this. She didn't mean it." I turned back one final time. "She absolutely meant it, James. And your response tells me everything I need to know about our future together." With that, I walked out of the Harrington mansion, leaving behind the ring, the man I thought I loved, and the fantasy that I could ever belong in their world. The dam broke the moment I slid into the back seat of Taylor's car. Amanda cradled me as the sobs tore through my body, pain radiating from both my bruised chest and shattered heart. "Get us out of here," Amanda instructed Taylor, who navigated away from the estate with shocked determination. "Did that really just happen?" Taylor kept repeating, glancing at me in the rearview mirror. "Did his mother actually assault you in front of everyone?" I couldn't answer through my tears. The physical altercation played on repeat in my mind. Victoria's contorted face, the sharp pain of her shoe connecting with my sternum, the violent twisting of my finger as she tore off the ring, the cruel words delivered with such venom. Back at my apartment, Amanda examined the angry red mark blooming across my chest. "We should document this," she said grimly, taking photos with her phone. "This is assault, Mia. She physically attacked you." "It doesn't matter," I whispered, wincing as she applied ice to the bruise. "It absolutely matters," Taylor insisted. "Rich people don't get to assault others without consequences." My phone buzzed incessantly with calls and messages from James. I finally answered on his 10th attempt, putting the call on speaker so Amanda and Taylor could hear. "Mia, I'm so sorry about what happened," James began, his voice strained. "Mother's been sedated. She had too much to drink and mixed it with her anxiety medication. She wasn't herself." "That's your response?" I asked incredulously. "Excuses for why she physically assaulted me and destroyed my engagement ring. She's mortified about her behavior. Once she's feeling better, she'll apologize properly. Your mother called me a dog, James. She said I don't belong in your family. And your first instinct was to comfort her rather than check if I was injured. You don't understand the pressure she's under maintaining the family's position," James continued. "This party was important for Dad's business connections." Mother's outburst embarrassed her tremendously. Each word revealed the vast chasm between our values. James was concerned about embarrassment and social standing while I was nursing physical and emotional wounds. "I can't do this anymore," I said quietly. "What do you mean? This relationship, your family, the constant belittling and now physical assault. I'm done." "You're overreacting," James protested. "We can work through this. I'll talk to Mother when she's more rational." "That's exactly the problem, James. You'll talk to her. You'll smooth things over. You'll expect me to accept another half-hearted apology. Nothing will fundamentally change. I love you, Mia." Those words, once so precious to me, now rang hollow. "If you loved me, you would have defended me today. You would have chosen me over your mother's approval. Love requires action, not just words." His silence confirmed everything. "Goodbye, James," I said, ending the call. The following days passed in a blur of pain medication for my bruised chest and ice cream for my wounded heart. James continued calling and texting, his messages evolving from excuses to promises. "I'll set boundaries with my family. We can move to another city after the wedding. I'll cut them off completely if that's what you want." I didn't respond. These desperate promises came too late and addressed symptoms rather than the fundamental problem James would always prioritize: his family's expectations over my dignity and well-being. 1 week after the disastrous party, I consulted with a lawyer friend of Taylor's who specialized in personal injury cases. "What happened to you was assault and battery," Melissa explained, examining the photos Amanda had taken. "Victoria Harrington's wealth doesn't place her above the law." "I don't want money," I clarified. "I just want her to acknowledge what she did was wrong. Sometimes accountability is only achieved through formal channels, Melissa advised. We have photographic evidence of your injuries, and I'm guessing there were dozens of witnesses. The cream of Boston society, I confirmed grimly. Let me make some calls. Several guests have already contacted me, discreetly disturbed by what they witnessed. They're willing to provide statements. To my surprise, Elizabeth Harrington reached out directly meeting me for coffee at a quiet cafe far from Beacon Hill. What my mother did was inexcusable, she said immediately. I'm ashamed I didn't intervene more forcefully. You were the only Harrington who checked if I was okay, I acknowledged. Elizabeth slid a small box across the table. Inside was my engagement ring, blackened but intact. I retrieved it from the fireplace after you left, she explained. It belongs to you regardless of what happens between you and James. The gesture touched me deeply. Thank you. There's something else, Elizabeth continued. You're not the first woman my mother has terrorized. James's college girlfriend Catherine faced similar treatment until she finally left, and William's first serious relationship ended after Mother's campaign against her. Why are you telling me this? Because I'm tired of watching my mother destroy people's happiness. I'm willing to provide a statement about what I witnessed and about her pattern of behavior. With Elizabeth's support and witness statements from several party attendees, Melissa filed assault charges against Victoria Harrington. The story quickly leaked to Boston's social columns and then to larger media outlets. Prominent Boston socialite assaults future daughter-in-law at engagement party. Victoria's initial response was predictably arrogant. She sent her lawyer to offer a substantial settlement in exchange for my silence and dropping the charges. Mrs. Harrington is prepared to compensate you generously for any misunderstanding, her attorney stated with practiced smoothness. A misunderstanding, I echoed. She physically attacked me in front of 200 witnesses and called me a dog. Heat of the moment. Mrs. Harrington was not herself that day. The answer is no. I don't want her money. I want accountability. When the settlement attempt failed, Victoria tried intimidation. Anonymous calls suggested I was risking my professional reputation. Horizon Design suddenly lost 2 clients with connections to Harrington Investments. Instead of cowering, I created a simple, factual social media post describing what had happened, accompanied by a photo of my bruised chest with my face cropped out. I named no names, but simply described being assaulted by my future mother-in-law at my engagement party. The post went viral, inspiring other women to share similar stories of abuse from wealthy, powerful in-laws. Journalists began connecting the dots, and despite not naming Victoria, her identity became obvious to Boston's social circles. The final blow to Victoria's campaign came when 3 former girlfriends of Harrington men came forward with their own stories of Victoria's cruelty and manipulation. What emerged was a clear pattern of abusive behaviour toward women Victoria deemed unsuitable for her family. Public opinion turned decisively against the Harrington matriarch. Several charitable organisations quietly removed her from their boards. Social invitations dwindled. Business associates began distancing themselves from the negative publicity. Victoria Harrington, who had wielded social standing as a weapon for decades, found herself facing the one thing she couldn't control: consequences for her actions. 6 months after the engagement party that changed everything, I stood in my new apartment overlooking the Charles River, watching the sun set over Boston. The space reflected my personal style: clean lines, vibrant colours, and abundant natural light. No trace remained of the muted tones and traditional furnishings I'd adopted trying to please Victoria Harrington. The bruise on my chest had long since faded, but the experience had permanently altered my perspective. Weekly therapy sessions helped me recognise how I'd gradually compromised my identity, trying to fit into a world that never intended to accept me. The greatest damage wasn't the physical assault, I told my therapist during one session. It was the slow erosion of self that happened so gradually I barely noticed. Professionally, my career had taken an unexpected positive turn. After my story went viral, a major design firm in New York contacted me, impressed by both my portfolio and my integrity in handling a public crisis. They offered a senior position with creative freedom and a substantial salary increase. I accepted, but negotiated to work remotely from Boston 3 days a week. Leaving my hometown entirely felt like letting the Harringtons win. This city belonged to me as much as to them. The court case against Victoria concluded with surprising speed once her legal team realised the evidence against her was overwhelming. Rather than risk a public trial, Victoria accepted a plea deal requiring community service anger management courses, and a restraining order preventing contact with me. Part of the agreement included a public apology delivered via her attorney at a press conference. The carefully worded statement acknowledged inappropriate behaviour and expressed regret for any distress caused. Though clearly crafted by lawyers to admit minimal culpability, it represented a significant humbling for a woman accustomed to dictating terms rather than apologising. James made one final attempt at reconciliation 3 months after our breakup. He appeared at my office looking thinner and less polished than I remembered. "I miss you," he said simply. "I've been seeing a therapist to understand why I couldn't stand up to my mother. I'm working on becoming the man you deserved." For a moment, looking at him stirred familiar feelings. I had loved this man, deeply planned a future with him. "I'm glad you're working on yourself, James. That's important. Is there any chance for us?" he asked, hope evident in his voice. I considered his question seriously before answering. "I think we both need to find people who don't require us to compromise our core values. You need someone who understands your family obligations, and I need someone who will prioritize our relationship above all else." "I could be that person now," he insisted. "Maybe, but I've realized I don't want to be with someone who had to learn to respect me after watching me be assaulted. That respect should have been fundamental from the beginning." As he left, I felt not bitterness, but a peaceful certainty that I'd made the right decision. True love shouldn't require sacrificing your dignity or identity. My healing journey led to unexpected new connections. I joined a support group for women recovering from toxic relationships, where I met incredible survivors whose stories inspired me. Through volunteer work with a women's shelter, I found purpose in helping others rebuild their lives after abuse. I also reconnected with Daniel, an old college friend, who'd reached out after hearing about my experience. Unlike James, Daniel came from a background similar to mine, working-class parents who emphasized education and hard work. Our coffee meetup turned into dinner, then weekend hiking trips, and eventually a relationship built on mutual respect and genuine acceptance. "I admire how you handled everything," Daniel told me one evening. "Standing up to the Harringtons took real courage." "I just refused to let someone else define my worth," I replied. The blog I started sharing my experience evolved into a platform for discussing class differences in relationships and recognizing emotional abuse. What began as personal therapy became a resource for others navigating similar situations. Several publishers expressed interest in expanding it into a book. I occasionally encountered Harrington family members around Boston. Richard nodded politely from across restaurants. Elizabeth and I maintained a friendly relationship, meeting occasionally for coffee. William studiously avoided me, and Victoria, true to the restraining order, kept her distance, though I sometimes felt her cold glare when our paths crossed at larger events. The engagement ring Elizabeth had rescued remained in my jewelry box, not as a reminder of what I'd lost, but of what I'd gained the strength to walk away from a relationship that demanded my diminishment in exchange for acceptance. One autumn afternoon, I received an email from a young woman named Rachel, who'd been dating William Harrington for several months. "Victoria has started making comments about my background and suggesting more suitable women for her son," she wrote. "Your story helped me recognize the warning signs early. Thank you for your courage in speaking out." Her message crystallized the most important lesson from my ordeal: our worst experiences often become the light that guides others. By refusing to be silenced by shame or intimidated by wealth and status, I'd helped another woman protect herself from a similar fate. True healing isn't just about personal recovery, it's about transforming pain into purpose. The engagement party that should have celebrated love instead taught me about my own resilience and capacity for growth. Victoria's cruelty, intended to diminish me, ultimately revealed my strength. I now understand that belonging isn't something others grant you through acceptance. It's something you create by honoring your authentic self and surrounding yourself with people who value that authenticity. Sometimes the most painful rejections redirect us to where we truly belong. Has anyone else experienced judgment or cruelty from potential in-laws? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to support more content about overcoming relationship challenges and finding your authentic path. Share with someone who might need to be reminded of their worth today. Thank you for joining me on this journey of healing and self-discovery. Remember, your value is never determined by someone else's inability to see it.